William Nicholson first worked as a documentary filmmaker at the BBC before becoming a writer, subsequently combining novels, children's books, plays and screenplays. His feature scripts range from action-adventures like Gladiator, First Night and Elizabeth the Golden Age, to emotional human dramas such as Nell and Firelight, which he also directed. To date, he has received 3 BAFTA nominations. It is with great pleasure that we welcome William Nicholson to the BAFTA and BFI Screenwriters Lecture Series.
Screenwriters do not write dialogue. This is a misunderstanding. People often say, which lines did you write? Now, of course we do write dialogue, but that's not the big thing we write. We write story. We create stories.
We've, as screenwriters, colluded in a system that treats the writing of the script as a disposable element, that you can get in a writer, sack a writer, get in another writer, that the script is probably done by many hands, probably by the director as well. So anyway, who knows who created it? That's the view.
You can have an entire movie without a single line of dialogue, and every moment has been written by a screenwriter. The screenwriter imagines what's going to happen, puts it on paper, and some minor functionary called a director comes and actually makes it happen. We write what you see. It's all there in paper.
Here in Britain, it's not our system. Here we have a much greater respect for writers. And actually, most films where you'll see a writer credit, that writer did actually write that film. So I think we can start doing something here to make people aware of writers. We've got a chance of rescuing the film process from this degradation, which of course produces the crap movies that we have so many of.
If you are somebody who wants to be a screenwriter and you're not breaking through and you're having to work at something else, rejoice in that. You will be astounded. Down the line, you'll be writing a screenplay about that burger bar that you've been working in, or whatever it is. If all you've ever done is watched movies, the only movies you can write are movies that recycle the contents of other movies. And God knows there's enough of them. But we don't want that. We want reality, we want truth. That's where the power lies. So, what is it that makes movies really great? I'll tell you in 3 steps. The first step is the structure. The structure of a story, let's call it a story, has got to mirror the reality that the audience is familiar with. Very, very important, this. If you have a series of random events that don't seem to connect, what people do doesn't follow on from anything they've done before, it throws you out of the story. You kind of don't feel involved. What happens as you watch a story is you feel, yes, if somebody acted like that, the following would follow. And that, yes, that's true, that's right. That matches my sense of reality. So the overall structure has got to relate to our lived experience of the world that we all share.
Well, his writing has always been very personally influential to me, because I started off in television, and I remember vividly seeing A Life Story, which was one of the first dramatic works that he wrote, and it was one of those examples of just something that was breathtakingly more than you would ever imagine you could see when you just switch on the television. It was a drama based on the life of Rosie Franklin and Watson and Crick, who discovered DNA, and it did the most unlikely thing. It took a scientific discovery, made it comprehensible to everyone in a dramatic form, littered with intelligence, great characterization, emotion, tension, and at the end of the 90 minutes you were watching a molecule, a DNA structure, and you understood how they had arrived at that discovery, and it all made sense.
I create a structure and I try and get it on a single piece of paper so that I can see the whole thing. See, the whole thing about writing, not just screenwriting, is you have to be micro and you have to be macro all at the same time. You must find your place in your overall scheme at every moment, but at the same time, when you go into the micro, that's got to exist on its own terms with great energy. And I think a lot of people lose the macro as they go along.
Second thing you've got to do, you've got to have characters that we actually recognize. And this is very important, because if you recognize the characters as being true people, you can care about them. And as step number 2 in what makes a great movie, in my opinion, it is caring about the characters, particularly about the central character. Think of how many movies you've seen where, it was kind of great, but you didn't care. You were never, ever engaged by the plight or the longings of the central character. That is dead in the water. Think of other movies you've seen where they probably didn't make a lot of sense and were a bit of a mess, but you really love that central person. Then they're going to work, even if they're messy. I'm not sure I do feel I have a voice to offer. I wish I could offer the voice. I don't think anybody wants my voice in films, to be honest with you. What I think I can increasingly offer, as my career has gone along, is an insight into what happens between people when they hurt each other and love each other and so forth. And I've kind of specialized in that. And so when I get to work on a film, I'll usually deepen a character and make their responses more truthful. That's what I'm trying to do anyway.
I find that most films I write fall into sections. I don't like to call them acts because there's often more than 3 and they're bigger than beats. But there are sections. This happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. I don't do them on index cards and shuffle them around. I rewrite the page if necessary. But yes, it's there. So there's a lot of pacing involved in writing a film. You need to know you're going quiet. Things are going gentle. Something is building. What is the audience being led to expect? What are they wanting at this point? What don't they know? What do they want to know? When am I going to tell them? When there's a big change, have I surprised them enough with that? And I need to know when that change happens so that I'm building to it.
Caring about characters generates the third step in the process, which is what, in my opinion, is the gold of movie making, which is emotion. We are in the business of generating emotion. That's why people go to the cinema. They want to be frightened, they want to be thrilled, they want to be filled with wonder, they want to laugh, they want to cry. I don't believe you can generate decent emotion without true characters in a true story.
What about some of that long-promised tea?
Yes, please.
You take milk, don't you?
Yes.
No, I'd be interested to know about your poems.
What do you want to know about them? How long they are? Their rhyme schemes? Their major influences?
Quite right, of course. You take sugar?
Sure.
No, you're quite right. Well, would you be so kind as to introduce me to the poems themselves?
Most films that posit a love affair fail, in my opinion. They assert it, they show you a close-up of a beautiful woman and a close-up of a beautiful man, and they play the kind of music that makes out that they're loving each other, and they try to persuade you, look, it's happening. I don't think that is enough. In Shadowlands, I had a middle-aged Don, a crusty bachelor Don, very defended, and I had a divorced Jewish woman who's a fan of his, who's read all his works, who's not exactly stalking him, but she's clearly interested in him. I didn't know anything else. I didn't know what happened between them, how the sparks flew, and I had to create a scene in which what you actually witness happening is the guy waking up to the possibility that there's something in this woman that's special.
And pain is a tool. If you like, pain is God's megaphone.
Megaphone to rouse a deaf world.
Oh, how embarrassing. You know my writing too well, don't you?
I have read most of it. I guess I knew you pretty well before we met.
Ah. But you've not had the personal experience.
Mr. Lewis, I have to stop calling you Mr. Lewis. It makes me feel like a kid. Can I call you Jack?
Yes, of course.
Jack, I'm Joy.
Oh, hello, Joy.
So, Jack, have you ever been really hurt?
don't give up, do you?
I always do know when I begin a screenplay where it's going to end. Myself, not everybody does. I find that very valuable. So that a little moment like that is actually part of a journey about pain and the value of pain.
What I have discovered over the years is that I don't start writing until I have my ending. I always structure the story. In other words, I sit down and say to myself, here is the situation I'm asked to write about. How can I turn it into a story? Who is the main character? What does the main character want? What are the obstacles in the way? And how is it going to resolve? And all of that I know the answer to before I start writing. Quite often I'll also say to myself, what are the great moments in this story? And where are they going to be happening? And what is the key emotion that's going to happen in them? So, you know, if you're writing a love story, you obviously have the moment when they meet is crucial. The moment when they, after having met, they discover that there's something happening between them that's more than just a normal meeting. Then there's going to be, things are going to go wrong, and then eventually they're going to discover each other and they're going to get together if you're telling that kind of story. And you've got to track each of these moments and say, how am I going to deliver these? And how am I going to make the audience believe this?
I am going to advise you very strongly at the end of this talk to become a writer-director if you want to be a writer. I have done it. And this puts me in a good position to say two things. Being a director is easier than you think. I was always in awe of directors. Rightly, by the way. I mean, you know, many directors are geniuses. However, quite a few directors are completely hopeless. And you really could have made the whole film without them present. In fact, I've been on one film where the director might as well have just stayed away. You can make a film as a director because you get an amazing team around you. You get a cinematographer who knows what he's doing. You get a designer who knows what he's doing. You get a first assistant who knows what he's doing. All they want from you is to know what results to produce. And if you're a writer, you know that. So don't be frightened of directing. I loved it.
Papa, help me! Papa, I want you!
I can help her. I know I can. But first she has to be taught to obey me.
If you harm so much as one hair on her head.
Do you think I, of all people, would ever hurt her? I make you a promise. Whatever I do to Louisa, I'll do to myself. You want her to love you. I want her to be loved.
There you have my entire theory of parenting. You want her to love you, I want her to be loved. And that ties in with what I was saying right at the beginning about being an author, having authority. You know, there's going to come a point in the stuff you write where you've got to write something that's actually of some value. And how do you get that value? You get it through living. So it actually, you know, you can't just spend your entire time writing. You've got to get out there and learn and live and have experiences and have relationships and process them all through your screenwriting. How do you learn to do that? You don't learn to do it by going to screenwriting school. You learn to do it by screwing up your own love life a great deal, by talking to people, by knowing about the pain there is in the world, by living through it yourself. I mean, I've not lived through an enormous amount of pain. In a sense, I've never been to war, for example. I wish I had. If I had, like Tolstoy went to war, and God, he could write about war, you know? So I think this does really emphasize what I want to say, is that your greatness as a writer is your greatness as a human being.
I think he is one of the masters on faith, romance and responsibility, and he can do that in a small and contained world, or he can do it in an epic and mythic world, but he brings a real understanding of character and humanity and emotion, which is singular and intelligent to the screen.
I don't think in terms of themes, but when I look back on my work, I observe that there are, which is interesting to me. A lot of my works have been set in the past. That's partly an accident. I don't adapt books, so people tend to come up with existing stories in the real world for me to turn into movies. I don't adapt books because somebody else has had all the fun of creating the characters, and that's what I like. Whereas when you're taking the real world, historically, you have to create characters out of that. But when I look at all the things I've done, two things keep recurring. One is religious themes, God, afterlife. And it's obviously something that's very deep in me, and I'm fascinated by anything to do with that. I'm not a believer myself, but I'm obviously somebody who wants to play around in that sandpit. The other one is love, of course, love and sex. I would add to that parenting, love, sex, kids. And I've put a lot of that into the films that I have done, and it's clearly something that obsesses me, and it keeps on popping up. I mean, I've even got both those themes into Gladiator, which is extraordinary.
They were 2 weeks off shooting. I was asked initially simply to solve the problem of making Russell Crowe a more attractive character, because, as you gather, character is my thing, character and emotion. What I said was, this is a fantastic project, but I don't like Maximus, and I don't like him because he's a killer, and I don't like killers. Now, probably a lot of people do like killers, but I don't. In fact, I like men who love their wives and children, because that's me. So why don't we make this big, butch, tough general a guy who wants to be a farmer, doesn't want to be a soldier, loves his wife and children? Now, there's one slight wrinkle here, which is that his wife and child are going to die, and that was in the plot. I couldn't change that. So I said, no problem. We will have an afterlife. And we're going to make this guy go through this entire film to get to his wife. He's not going through this entire film to kill the bad guy. He's going through it to do something loving. And that decision alone, I believe, doubled the receipts of that film, because it meant women liked the film. Women went to the film because here was a hero who is dead butch and can protect you against baddies, but he's tender and a family man. Caring about characters does not just apply to your hero, it applies to your baddie as well. I believe that a baddie who you feel you understand why they're a baddie is a better baddie. You're more interested, you're more engaged, you believe the baddie more. So my task was to make Commodus somebody you could relate to. And the scene as it arrived to me consisted of Commodus sitting by the bed on which his father, Marcus Aurelius, Richard Harris, is lying, and he's speaking about his father, and he's kind of moaning, about how his father doesn't love him. And then you realize his father's dead, and you guess that he has killed him. My reaction to this is, that is not the train crash. I want to see the train crash. I want to see him kill his father. So I rewrote the scene, bring his father back to life. I want to actually see that interaction between them. I wrote some speeches in which Commodus attempts to explain himself to his father and basically to the audience, so that even though he's still a bad guy, you think, you know what, I can kind of understand where he's coming from. In his desire for his father to love him, which is the emotional engine of the scene, that desire for his father to love him would become the energy with which he murders his father. In other words, he would hug him to death.
Father, Commodus, your false as a son is my failure as a father. I would put to the whole world if you would only love me.
I suppose, in a way, I think the thing that's most interesting about the way he works is the way he takes characters, and he provides characters with an intelligence and a privacy and an interior life and an exterior life that they play out on screen for you, so that you see their imagination and you witness their imagination.
When I'm asked to write a film, like Elizabeth, the Golden Age, Elizabeth is the centre of this film. What is her situation? Her situation is that she is a queen and therefore she can't marry, because if you marry a man, the man is your superior, your husband can control you. Unacceptable for a queen. She can't marry, she can't have children. So what does she do about love? Dilemma number one. How does she solve that? This is me making this up. She says, what I'm going to do is, my beloved lady-in-waiting, this young girl, Bess, she will deal with the part I can't give to the man I love. So basically, he can have sex with Bess, can't have sex with me, but he loves me, and I love Bess.
That I found extremely interesting, to put my main character in this situation, because you just know when you see that starting, it ain't going to work. Now, why is it not going to work? Not because she says, oh, I hear you've been sleeping with Bess. Oh, I'm not going to have any of that. She's the queen. She's bigger than that. But the thing that blows her apart is when Bess gets pregnant. And suddenly, she's confronted with the physical reality of the thing she will never have, a baby.
All of that comes out of saying, what's it like to be Elizabeth? An entire story comes out of that. Now, there's another story to do with a battle, which has to be woven into that. But that's what interested me, and I built it around character.
I'd like to give your son my blessing.
I'd be honored.
This is her act of reconciliation, to hold the baby, Raleigh's baby, Bess's baby, in her arms. And what I then faced was the idea of, how do I indicate what she's feeling at the end? And what I opted for, and the production accepted, was a piece of voiceover, which is, widely known as director's mistake when you have to put voiceover on. But this was planned. I think it works really powerfully, because I wanted to take the whole emotional, I wound it so tight, take it to the next level.
I am called the Virgin Queen. Unmarried. I have no master. Childless. I am mother to my people. God, give me strength to bear this mighty freedom. I am your queen.
I've had a very uneven experience. Some of it's been good, a lot of it's been bad. But you get paid a lot, and that then becomes the continuing motivation to continue in the big film world. Plus, to be fair, it's thrilling to be involved in a film that goes around the world, that everybody sees, that everybody talks about, that influences the culture. That is thrilling. Quite rare. I've had a little bit of a share of some of that, and I'm very grateful for that. But it's not a world to lock yourself into. It's a world to go into and enjoy, and then have another world also to go into to keep you sane.
If you want to be a screenwriter, I'm going to say that you need three things. You need talent, obviously. And by the way, talent can be learned. I truly believe that. What is talent? I think it's, as a screenwriter, you have to be this fountain of ideas all the time. You've got to be confident. You need self-confidence tempered by self-criticism. That's my little kind of summary of it. If you don't criticize your work and you don't let other people criticize it, you will go to hell. If you have no confidence, you'll produce nothing. Discipline. If you haven't got discipline, forget it. This is not a game that you do like an essay at university where you stay up all night on black coffee at the last minute. I don't know, maybe some people do. I don't believe it. You do it every day. You do it systematically. You don't let yourself stop. You make yourself right even when you don't want to write. You make yourself right even when people have criticized you and you feel like hell. The third thing is you are going to have a very particular kind of temperament. This is because the life of a screenwriter is unmitigated hell. Now, you may not have picked this up from what I've said so far, but it really, really is. Everything you write will be ripped to pieces by other people who are not fools. It would be easy if they were fools. You could despise them. They're not. They're smart people. Every time they rip your script apart, you think, why didn't I see that? It's so obvious. You feel like you are nothing at the end of every session with notes, and you've somehow got to drag yourself up again and go back to work. And you have to do that repeatedly, and after you've done it, draft after draft, blow me in comes a director who seems to think that the script is an early sketch, that he can do what he likes with. And then along come actors who say, oh no, I think we'll do something different. So you cannot be a shrinking violet with a passionate sense of your own voice. They don't want your voice. They don't want you. They just want a job done. The minute you click send and your script goes off to the production team, whatever stage, put it out of your mind, start something else. That's the only way you will actually not go insane in this strange business. We writers are so fortunate because we live our lives twice. We live it through our experience, and then we live it through the reflection on that experience that comes through our writing, which then deepens our subsequent experience. So we are the people who are going through this life awake, and we're surrounded by people in a sort of trance state. But luckily, they're the people who pay the money to go to the cinema.